Plug and Alley presents the Working in Music Sucks podcast, the show where we talk about what sucks about working in music so you don't have the same problems. I'm your host, John Maciel, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to my heart because I see year after year so many audio engineers asking themselves the same question and never getting a response that I think is the proper response. And today's episode is about audio school or music school. And there's different areas of music school or audio school, and I am going to speak on some of them, not all of them, and the benefits and the cons to those, and my own personal beliefs based on my own experiences, having done audio school at the technical level. Now, audio engineering and the career of audio isn't going to be like becoming a doctor or a lawyer. Those are the types of jobs where they require you to have a level of fundamental education, and there's a hiring process that eventually you will land a job. If you go to school to become a lawyer, you follow the path, and eventually you can become a lawyer at a firm or have your own firm. That's a traditional career path. And I think for a lot of us, we like to think of audio as a traditional career path, if possible, because it gives us a sense of security. But in reality, that's just not the truth. It's a service-based business that you're building yourself. You are your business. So audio school, it can give you certain fundamentals that will help you. They're going to have courses like understanding signals, understanding a waveform, miking instruments, things of that nature, which in my opinion, it's kind of one of those things where, yeah, you could go to school to learn how to record something, but ultimately you're going to learn more in the school of trial and error and doing it yourself than following what's in a book in a class that's costing you thousands when you could literally just nowadays go on to Google or YouTube and someone else teach you. Or there's some music programs out there that are decent. But that stuff is hands-on. Like the art of recording is a hands-on thing. Like the book knowledge is the technical knowledge and maybe some of the fundamental, but ultimately even that knowledge is kind of flawed because 400 hertz on an EQ on a different instrument is going to mean a different thing. And if that instrument's also being played in a different key, and how it's performed, all these are things that matter. So understanding the technical knowledge, yes, is one thing, but those rules won't always apply all the time. And with music and with audio school, many people, myself included, were like, well, if I go to audio school, then, if I try to get a job at a studio, they'll see I went to school and they'll be like, oh, they obviously know more than other people. When in reality, that's not how it works at all. I've never been in a scenario when it comes to audio recording where going to audio school has done anything to help people want to know, do I have the technical and practical skills and the experience to pull off what the role requires? Now, in bigger cities, I will say, some studios will look at your resume before bringing you in as an intern or like a low-level engineer. So that can help, but it's very few in between where that type of stuff exists. Now, the caveat to this is going to music school gets you ideally access to gear you otherwise wouldn't have access to. So being someone that's learning one-on-one on your own, you only have as much money as you have. So getting your hands on like a distressor or some sort of like tube tech compressor or something like that, it's not going to be something easy to get a hold of, right? Whereas when you go to music school, if you're lucky enough to get lab time or hands-on time, you might have access to like a Pultec or an SSL console, something like that. And that could be a cool benefit, but the amount of how much you're paying to do that, it just doesn't make sense. And looking back at how much it costs to go to audio school and to learn how to use like consoles and things like that, I look back and I'm like, man, if I would have just put that money away within the 2 years or 3 years it took me to pay that off, if I would have just taken that money, gone out there, executed, and then, bought some courses here and there as it became available, I would be able to have a half decent studio by not going to audio school. That money could have been saved. And when I came to that realization and my career, I was like, man, I honestly didn't need audio school. Like it helped in the sense of like getting to know other people like me and finding community, because finding audio communities online wasn't huge. When I started, there was like a couple of forums, but it wasn't like it is nowadays where you can literally find several communities in audio. So like the networking aspect, if you're going to audio school, I would say if you're going to meet people and to network and find a community, then yeah, like, I mean, you're going to spend a lot of money to do it, but if that's the intention is to grow your network, then yeah, that's going to work probably, if as long as you are being honest and truthful to yourself and getting out there. Now, when it comes to like instruments, I do think that going to a technical school to learn your instrument better can be great for you in your career, because you're going to learn theory, discipline, and exercises that will make you more versatile of a player, as opposed to like learning it on your own, and you'll have to perform because you'll have assignments and things. So I do think that can help. But the reality of going from that to becoming like a session musician or someone who's being hired by producers, it's like you have to do the networking to get into those circles. So, keep that in mind. It's just because you're studying your instrument and you're going to become proficient, it may not lead to an actual sustainable career. Like the career part will always end up being, at the mercy of how much work you're going to put in. It's yeah, you're in school to learn, but the real work doesn't start until or while in school and afterwards. And again, the networking thing, it's always going to come back to networking. Like your net worth is in your network. And if your network is non-existent, you're just not going to have a career in audio to begin with. That's why you have to find communities. You have to find people who can refer work to you, who can refer you to work, things of that nature. Now, business-wise, there's a lot of technical schools that will offer, music business understanding 101. That stuff can help. Every person I've encountered on my journey who works at a label or does management or anything, everyone's kind of like learned as they've gone. I've never met anyone who has actually gone to audio or music school to learn the business side of things. It's like trial by fire. They got thrown into it on accident, or their band needed management. They ended up learning it. And then from there, they managed more bands, or somehow got into like a label role. I've personally on my journey, I've never met anyone that's gone to like music business school. I know they have those programs, and I don't hear many. I've never heard an interview or anything. If someone out there has successfully made that transition, I would love to hear about it, because I have so many questions on how that world would work. Now, I talked a little about recording, which is like the audio engineering and the theory. How about mixing? Because that's ultimately everyone in the perfect world is like, I want to be a mixer, because the idea of being the person who makes something sound amazing and then send it off to master engineering, that's what people listen to. It just sounds like the dream job, right? Like that's what everyone wants to do. If your dream is become a Grammy-winning mixer, I don't understand why you would spend any day in audio school. Like, move to a big city, Los Angeles, Austin, Texas, Nashville, New York. Move to a big city where there's big music scenes, and get out there, find out where, through social media, find out where the big names are hanging out. Usually that stuff can be, Instagram used to be good at that, but I think Twitter's become the better spot, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. That gives you an idea, but find out what platforms a lot of these producers and mixers and the people at labels that matter. And the way you find out this information is go through like your, favorite 20 or 50 records and start writing down names and labels and where these labels are located, the people being shouted out as management. Like, create a Google sheet with all that information. Like this, you're navigating the marketplace. You're a business, so you need to know who are the players in the business. And then from there, put yourself in a situation where you're like, okay, if I can get myself in this city, I have more opportunity, but I can't get there yet. So I need to build relationships with these people online, because maybe remotely they'll shoot me an opportunity and I can, on a small deal, do a test mix, see if I land it, and then from there, see the next opportunity. I will say, if you can't afford it and you're privileged enough to make a move to one of those major cities for music, it is probably one of the best investments in your career you'll ever make. My career would have not taken off had I not moved to Los Angeles and spent like 5 years out there and just worked my butt off, got to know people, and then learned everything I could before moving out of that city. And there's a lot to be said about someone just messaging you like, hey, you want to meet at this place? I'm meeting up with so-and-so. And you're just like, what world do we live in where this is even like a conversational thing to happen? But it's just like, that's the nature of the city. If you put yourself in the right communities and networks, people just like, it's more about being in the right place to hang out, and hangouts turn into potential opportunities. If there's a good follow-up and relationship there, it's not guaranteed to happen, but it can happen. And that's the thing with music school, and understanding like what's the pros and cons of what you're trying to achieve and do ultimately. I don't think music school or audio school is necessary. And with the emergence of online education with audio, you can definitely learn more through many courses and resources online than you can in a classroom with someone who hasn't actually, either done a record on a label and or had the experience to work under like insane pressure of getting 2 records done because 2 bands are going on tour, but yet you have like 5 people telling you on one record what needs to be done and 2 on the other, and balancing notes, and then an assistant. Like, working in the real world is so much different than what you'll ever get in an educational classroom. And these are just stories and topics that don't always come up on Real World Scenarios. Like, only in a real world environment do you actually learn what it's like to maintain and balance relationships with your family and friends when you're doing this stuff. So music school, to me, I have a bitter taste in my mouth. Like, I wish I would have never spent that money and would have spent it on audio gear. But also, had I not gone on that, journey in my own audio career, I wouldn't know this. And as I worked for other companies in the past and people would ask about audio school, I'm like, sure, you can do it. But as someone who's done it and knows many people, it's like you always hear about that one person who made it or made something happen from it, and they're like so happy it worked. But it's like, I always ask, how many other people were in that classroom or that graduating class that you were in at that technical school or that audio school? How many other people also had success? Because that's what I look at, is the conversion to success ratio based on how much money. So if you're putting in like $30,000 to $50,000 to learn something, and then you actually go into the real world and you can't land that job, going to audio school is just as useless as going to getting a journalism degree nowadays. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's probably some people who are journalists right now. Yeah, my bad. My sister's definitely one of those people. So yeah, she's probably going to hear this and be like, yo, what? But you get what I'm saying. It's like, what is the actual goal of what you're trying to achieve? And are you just, going to school to give yourself like this facade of, if I do this game plan, it'll work out, but I'm not going to put in the hours of work that need to be done. I'm not going to do the networking. Because if you're not doing if you're doing only the fundamentals, but you're not worrying about building the business, then ultimately, what are you doing? You're not building yourself up for success. You're just going to be super bitter, upset that something didn't work out. So if you know intentionally what you're trying to get out of audio school, and you're like, no, I want to go because I want to be in a hub where I can meet talented musicians. I want to know the theory people because they're probably going to be producers, and I want to be friends with all the good producers there. I want to be friends with all the good musicians because they're probably going to have bands or be in bands or know producers as well. So this is going to help my network grow. These people are also going to probably know business people in the industry as I am doing on my own. So by the time you graduate, you have like 100 friends and acquaintances that you all went through the same journey together. And now as a mixer, if that's what your goal is, a recording engineer, you have people to, follow on social media and soft touch with and see how they're doing, and potentially being top of mind so that when an opportunity occurs, you're top of mind. If that's why you're going to pay the $30,000 to $50,000, sure, because ultimately in a few years, based on how you run your business and how much you're bringing in, it's going to pay for itself. So you're like, yeah, it was a very, very risky investment, but the investment ended up paying off. If you're not one of those people who think that way, and the idea of you networking and trying to get to know people scares you, don't waste your money and time. Just focus on your craft. Focus on learning the social skills that I mentioned in a previous episode that I'll leave in the show notes. Focus in on growing your skill sets so that you can grow your network remotely by interacting with other people online in the profession. You don't have to go to audio school to make a career out of it. What can it help? Yes, but it's not a necessity. And if you're just doing it because you truly believe like, oh, if I do this thing, then my parents will be happy, and or it maybe it'll pan out. Like if you have a definitive gut feeling that yes, it will pan out, I would just maybe take a year to see if that's ultimately the right decision for you. You would be amazed at what you can accomplish in 1 year if you just really stick to something, stay consistent. You know, you want to be a mixer, but you have no bands to mix or anything. Get some people online who know how to play instruments, collaborate and come together and be like, hey, we're going to write one song a month. So by the end of the year, we have 12 songs that we can use on our own portfolios to use to leverage to go find artists. And not only do you get better at working collaboratively with the team, because ultimately being a mixer or working anything audio, it's about collaborating, talking with people, figuring out what people mean by certain things, practicing those skills while you're waiting to see, maybe, do I need to go to high school? Those are going to benefit you so much more than dropping $30K on something that becomes a certificate that you hang on your wall and you're like, yep, not doing anything related to that, but I guess I tried. But did you really? So if you found this episode helpful, please share it. If you found this episode helpful, and if you found value in this episode and know someone else that this episode can bring value to, please share it. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you want to continue this discussion or talk about anything music or gear related, there is a link to the Plugin Alley Discord server in the show notes. And until next time, remember, with what you've learned on today's episode, working in music doesn't have to suck. I'm your host, John Maciel, and I'll see you next time, friends.